Do for the homework assignment?
Get login working.
All right, and so we have register here, right? So did we actually finish registering?
That was part of our homework.
Here, register the user. So right now we have this whole process for determining if something bad had happened. So create button pressed gets called. We create this var message thing here. If they didn't put a username in, we yell at them. If they didn't put a password in, we yell at them. If you didn't confirm your password, we yell at you. If you didn't enter an email address, we yell at you. If the passwords didn't match, we yell at you. Otherwise, if we have nothing inside of, if we do have something inside of message, that means there was a problem, so we're going to yell at you. And this is this asynchronous thing that we did right there at the end. Where here's a alert view controller, then we present it with a completion block, and in the completion block we have a delay in this is a constant called nanoseconds per second. We convert that to a double, multiply it by 2 to give us a delay of 2 seconds. Then we set our time to be a dispatch time. We build that using the current time and then an offset from the current time, which is this guy. This is like almost as bad as working with strings. Then we call dispatch after that says do something after some amount of time. And what's that amount of time? Time now plus 2 seconds. All right. Then what are we going to do then? We're going to get the main queue. Which is the kind of the main thread the application's running on. And what are we going to do in that? We're going to dismiss the little alert that popped up. So a whole lot of work just to make an alert pop up on the screen, then disappear
After 2 seconds.
after 2 seconds. But whatever, that part works. All right, so then we get into the else. The else says we actually have all the information from the user, so let's go ahead and actually register the user. So I'll go into the code here. So that's this guy right here. So let's steal this code and then we'll modify it as necessary. All right, so if we are in here, we're going to go ahead. That means we've already checked to make sure they put stuff in all those text boxes, and we also know that the passwords match. Okay, we know all those things. So we're going to register the user, so we'll create a brand new PF user object. So this is a blank PF user from parse. We're going to set the username of that user to whatever's in the username text field. We're going to set the password for that user to whatever's in the password or confirm password text field. We'll set the email to whatever's in the email text field. And we didn't read any additional information in, right? So one thing we can do is we can choose to add additional information for users for certain applications.
Whose phone number do you think that is?
I don't know. Why don't you dial it?
Okay.
So in any case, when you think about different applications, sometimes you might need to store more than just username, password, and email for something. So inside of the PF user object, we can hold a whole bunch of other pieces of information because that guy's effectively just a big dictionary, right? But in our case here, we're not holding anything else. Excuse me. Then we're going to go ahead and do sign up in background with block. Did we talk about the asynchronous stuff last time? Like did I talk much about signing up in the background or doing anything in the background last time when we were introducing dispatch? Or not really? Okay. All right. Well, so let me, if I did, let's just re-talk about it because it's really important. So the idea here is that the advantage of doing this, and this is where it connects back to the operating systems class for what we've been talking about recently, is we don't want to have to wait around for this user to get registered. We're going to trust it happens. So we're going to sign up in the background with this block. What does that say? It means when you finish, go ahead and call this closure. So as soon as you finish trying to sign up in the background, because you do get whether or not it's succeeded or not, this guy. And let's see. I'm going to go ahead and delete that because sometimes when you copy code in from there, I think I mentioned last time that sometimes the The code is dated, so I'm going to first change user to a let, and I'm going to go ahead and say user.signup in background, and we can have our completion block here, and we'll go ahead and do that. Let's see. Yep, we'll use this one. So I'm going to go ahead and let that expand on its own, and then this is going to be success, and then our error here is going to be error, and then here's the code that we'll be executing that within. So if success, user is registered, do what now? Else, there was a problem. And if we want, we can do, what do we get from error? Error dot. You know what? We're just going to do user info, error dot. All right, so that's a user info is an array, or rather a dictionary, and we'll go ahead and get the error. And we're going to print this guy out. All right, so in the event we had a error, we'll just print out whatever the error was, which is going to be the value for key error from the user info dictionary of the error that came back. So we'll just hope this never happens. Okay? This is the guy we care about here. So if it was success, remember in our application where are we currently sitting? Let me go ahead and just launch our app real quick. So we want to create an account to log in, so we'll go to register, it pops up, we put in our various pieces of information, we click create, after it goes through and checks and give us this it says as. Once we put everything in, we hit create, it should then register us, it'll call sign up in background, as soon as it's done, we'll get here. Okay? Now I'm going to kind of show you the difference of what can go on here. Well, here, I'll explain it this way, that way you don't have to. So if I write this code here, when I do sign up in background with block, we're going to say, just for the sake of this argument right now, that this is going to take 1 second. Takes a second to reach out over the internet and do the registration thing and have parse do its thing in the background and then ultimately spit back that everything worked out fine and you have no error. All right, so after a second, we finally get this closure called. Okay, now if I put print here, right there, this guy will print out immediately before this guy returns. So if I say print over here, for instance, here will be printed out before over here in 99.99999% of all situations. Probably 100%, I just don't want to back myself into a corner. All right. The idea is that doing this in the background has a delay associated with it. Okay, but this is an asynchronous call, which means that this is non-blocking. Non-blocking async call. So this guy gets thrown onto the stack to go get worked on by another thread or whatever sign up in background does, and then our code keeps cooking. So I'll see print here before I see over here. Okay, because of the order in which these things will end up happening. It's very, 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 very unlikely that we will get inside of this closure prior to hitting the very next line of code, when this guy clearly takes some time. Make sense? And that's an important thing to understand, because anything that we do after this, so for instance, what if I dismiss the view controller? So if I say dismiss view controller animated, true. Completion, we'll just set to nil. Like that. If I do that, that view controller dismisses before the registration actually finishes. Make sense? Which means that we could potentially, depending on timing, kill off this register VC instance before this actually gets returned. So we may not actually get a registered user. It'd be a race. It'll be close, because now we've added a delay in on this side because this takes time. So now it's a race between who takes longer, the animation to dismiss this view controller, or how long it takes parse to return with whether or not the user was registered or not. Now, the hope is that regardless of whether we receive the message, the user should be registered on the other side. Okay, go ahead.
So, is this spawning a new task or a new thread, or because asynchronous, you think it would be spawning a new thread essentially? So that thread would it be owned by this view controller then? So by dismissing the view controller, you kill all children? Or would that thread execute?
The thread would be owned by the main thread, by this application.
So,
assuming a thread is being spawned. So realistically, it's probably being written in terms of the dispatcher, this guy.
So if the dismiss view controller animated executed before the success or failure, would it still print out over here, even though that it got dismissed?
I don't think it would.
So the thread would be killed off when you're dismissing it? Because I would...
Yeah, let me think about that again. So the advantage of a closure is that closure gets passed as a function. Therefore, this function that's in here does not specifically belong to this instance of create button pressed, which means that this guy would still happen. As long as it didn't specifically kill off the thread, which it shouldn't. Although, this user is a local variable inside of this. Therefore, would this guy get reclaimed by automatic garbage collection before this is able to happen, therefore giving us a crash bug, like a null pointer exception, because it's trying to call a closure that's owned by a variable that no longer exists. Bottom line is, this is bad code, the way we have it written right now. Okay, there's all sorts of things that can happen, and those things may not be consistent. All right, because the whole purpose of this is, even though this guy is non-blocking, meaning things after this can happen, if we do things after the sign up and background with block, they may have an impact on whether or not this guy stays in existence. We're asking for trouble. So the correct thing to do here for us would be to go ahead and dismiss inside of the code here. So we won't actually dismiss the view controller until the registration was actually a success. All right. So the only circumstance that we would dismiss the view controller is if they actually did get successfully registered. Then we know at that point in time that we can go ahead and log in on the login side of things because we definitely now have a registered user. We couldn't have gotten back to that main screen until this happens. All right. So that causes kind of an interesting an interesting type problem, and that is if this takes a long time. If this takes a long time to register, let's say it's 5 seconds. That's going to feel like a long time to a human being. We're sitting there waiting for the screen to basically disappear with no feedback. We don't have any spinners or anything happening right now. So we have no feedback, and after 5 seconds, the screen just disappears. We would probably call that a bad application. The application felt like it had a delay, right? The alternative is, as soon as we hit the button, we can go ahead and dismiss the register view controller right away. And then from the end user's perspective, we think the application's really snappy and everything happened really fast, and we're impressed how fast the internet is, even though we're in airplane mode and we forgot. Yeah. And we go to try to log in with this newly registered user, and it doesn't work because we're in airplane mode to begin with. But let's say somewhere in there we un-airplane moded it-ish, which. That sound right?
Seems legit. Yeah.
Okay. So, and then potentially we've lost this variable. So punchline here is that we need to be careful in how we manage asynchronous tasks. Okay, when things are happening in the background, they're happening in the background for a reason. We need to be able to handle that. All right, so what I'm going to do right off the bat here is we're going to go back out to our storyboard. And I am going to throw in here a little spinner duty. All right. And we're going to, who? Spinner duty? It is the official Swift term. Style is going to be, large white is going to be a problem, but only temporarily. So we're going to change this to large white. Now he's invisible. And then we'll make the background color black. Perfect.
That looks like an awesome.
You like this?
Could we make it like very quick?
Really?
Do we even need the spinner there? Because it does show it up in the top. Well, in the emulator, at least, it does show it up in the top that you're using your data to
Oh
connect.
yeah, it's perfect.
That better?
Oh, so much better.
All right. Well, yeah, you just know your data, but
Yeah.
to an average
I-
user, I mean, that could be
okay.
your emails being
That's
checked
true.
in the background or something like that. But now we only want this dude to pop up in the event that it's spinning. So, and this spinner thing on iPhone is a little bit tricky. If we use the default version of this, that is, by default, it's animating. Okay, and let's see. We automatically hide it when it's stopped. All right. In fact, actually, let's not animate it by default. So we're going to just have it hiding whenever it stops. So this guy's by definition hidden until we start him spinning. Now we need to give ourselves programmatic access to this guy. So we'll go ahead and give ourselves an outlet. And this is a UI activity indicator view, so AIV. Actually, let's just call it the spinner.
I like that better.
Oh, was that phrasing? Did I say something?
No, it was
Just funny?
you just gave up on the technical terms.
All right, so let's go in here. Where am I? Register? All right, so right before we try to sign up in the background, we're going to go ahead, and this is before we make that call. We're going to say self.thespinner. Does it start? Start animating. That should make it start spinning, which should then make it visible. All right, and we should then see the guy going. So let's do, just for the sake of argument, I'm actually going to comment out this code just for a moment, just so we don't actually register somebody. We just want to see when we hit that button that we start this thing animating. So I'm going to register. We don't see it initially. I'll hit create. Oh, I got to fill crap in. ABC, whatever. Create. There's our spinner. So this guy kind of lets us know that things are happening. Now, if we use the spinner this way, it will run in its own thread. If we try to micromanage spinners, it'll conflict with the main thread. We'd have to run it in a dispatcher or in its own NS thread is the way you used to do it. So the proper way to use spinners for iPhone is to have them hidden when they're not spinning, and then decide when to turn it on. All right, and then we can turn it off whenever. In this case, we don't actually have to turn it off because we're going to actually dismiss the view controller. All right, the guy will stop spinning. If you want to be explicit about it, you could go ahead and turn this guy off first and then dismiss the view controller. That way automatic garbage collection doesn't have to come and clean up a thread. That would be nice of you if you clean up the room before you leave the house, so to speak. All right, so in any case, now we have some feedback that something is happening on the screen. So let's go back in here now. All right. So before we dismiss the view controller, let's go ahead and we'll be good. We'll say the spinner dot stop animating, and that should automatically hide it. But the important thing for us is that the thread associated with it, or at least the scheduler probably uses dispatch now, has removed it from the list, so we don't have to rely on somebody else to remove that for us. Probably adds a little efficiency to our program. Nothing that you would likely ever notice. All right, so upon success, we'll go ahead and tell it to stop animating, dismiss the view controller. We should be back on the login page. Otherwise, we can go ahead and display an error that there was a problem or whatever. We'll just do a print for right now. So let's go ahead and get a user registered. And prove that this works. All right, so we'll register.
Do you already have any users registered?
I guess it's probable, seeing as though you guys had the code to it.
Check parse.
Yeah, we're about to check parse, and it's going to be on the recording.
Accident.
I didn't do it.
These are children. All right, so ABC 1 2 3, ABC 1 2 3,
My parse though looks horrible.
and then we'll say. All right. Oh, I don't know why we have the email address as a secure field, but
I noticed that too.
we can fix that. So go ahead and hit create. We're back here. So now we actually have a real user. I'll try to log in with, well, we have to put in the code to log in with that user. So ABC123 was the password, and the username was AwesomeFat. I take it I probably should not go to parse. Is that the...
I don't know, accident, should he?
I don't want to. Why not?
Well, I guess it does block most of what it will.
You probably fix the parse.
What's up?
You can fix it in post.
Shut up.
Alright.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Jump cuts.
I have 4 users.
What you make
I don't
accident?
know. Why is everyone looking at me?
Because we know it's you.
Before I click this, be aware that the dean looks at these things.
It's
And,
like
and anything
middle
bad we see in here has come from David Haxton.
It's like middle school level bad, okay?
I think we have different. I think we did different things in middle school accident. Oh, thank you.
I bet Margin put that there.
No,
All right.
it would have been I love goats.
So we have our 1 user now registered, and before we forget, let's take the secure thing off of our email. We certainly don't need that to be a secure text entry. We could choose that guy to be email address only. That would help secure our email things. We don't actually have to, we probably still should check to make sure they put in a legal email address, but at the very least, email, using this special email keyboard for that should make things easier for people, but whatever. So we've done our part. So now we'll go back to our login VC screen, and let's go ahead and handle the logging in stuff. First thing we want to see here, though, is have we done anything in here yet? No, we haven't. So idea here is that aren't we going to have to do some pretty similar checking to what we did here in Register VC? In terms of making sure they put crap in, because we don't want to make a call to parse, passing it a blank username and password. We'd like to check that ahead of time locally. If for no other reason, then parse eventually charges you for a per call basis once you have so many calls. So if you're literally, I mean, like we can create a quick little infinite while loop and literally have parses billing turn on for us. Yeah. So you want to be kind of careful, I guess, and don't get any ideas about that. All right. So in any case, what we'd like to do here, seeing as though we had so much work that went into our registration process over here for our alerts, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to move this code into our singleton. So we already have a singleton, don't we? Phone core. So I'm going to steal that stuff here.
My tool doesn't have any like specific SQL injection type things locally, does it?
SQL injection type things. So
Well,
tell me what you're actually trying to accomplish rather than just saying a complicated phrase.
So putting in certain characters break out of the string so you can get into the code. Like Apple kind of protects you, so you don't really have to worry about that for logins and anytime you're going up against the database.
Oh, you mean like if somebody tries to put some sort of code into a text
Right.
box and submit?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if they have like specific security for it, but because the interface lives in a layer outside of the code, I would think that you're as secure as you would be in most situations. I would think it would be unlikely that somebody could naturally inject any code into your application unless you took whatever was in a text field and you ran it through something dangerous, right? You know, let's try to compile anything they put in here, you know, just in case.
You'd be surprised. People just throw the password in text fields.
Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. All right, so we're going to go ahead and create a static function in here. And this guy is going to be called show alert. And I'm going to have it take no parameters just for a moment just so we can paste in the rest of the stuff here. And we're going to have this guy taking a message. We're actually have it taken a title, have it taken a message. We'll leave the preferred style hard-coded. But we also need to have the presenting view controller as well as the time that it should be on the screen. And now we can make a generic version of this that pops something up and then dismisses it at the right amount of time. So we're putting this up at the core, that way we could use it both log in and register. So we're going to have this guy take in a, let's take in a title, which is a string, a message, which is a string, let's call this presenting view controller. Which is the UI view controller. And then a, let's call it on-screen delay, which is an int. Something like that. So those are our pieces of information we'll read in from this. So the title will be whatever was passed in for title. The message will be whatever was passed in for message. The present view controller is going to come from our presenting view controller, this guy. So instead of self, it'll be presenting view controller. Let's see. Delay is going to be this number, which is on-screen delay, times that double. Does it want that to be like an int 64 or something like that? What are you complaining about? Binary operator cannot be int and double. Okay, so you want me to just make this a double? And then you're happy again? Okay, that's fine. So now it's complaining down here. All right, otherwise, this is no longer self. Now this is presenting view controller. Dot dismiss. So now we've taken that scary looking piece of code that knows how to show an alert, well, that knows how to make a specific view controller, the view controller that intends to present the alert, to show the alert with a certain title and a certain message and keep it on the screen for a certain amount of time. We've put that all in a centralized place. So now what we can do is inside of our register VC, rather than do this here, we can go ahead and do phone core dot show alert title error message, whatever the message was, because we had filled in message above, presenting view controller itself, and our delay will be 2 seconds. All right, so now whenever we need to do an alert application-wide, we can make an alert show up like that pretty easily. All right, so let's just test that real quick.
So is that always, when you show an alert, does it always show up on whatever screen you're at? Like there's no...
In this case, it will, because I'm passing in the screen that's presenting it.
Okay.
I'm letting him know
Okay.
who we intend to present it.
Yeah. I was wondering how you were...
So we'll go ahead and register. We'll do create. It pops up. You must enter a username. Gone after 2 seconds. So seems to work. Now that we have that little power tool, we can now apply the exact same thing to our user. Our login screen. So I'm going to just steal this whole chunk for right now. And we'll go into our login screen. And we already have those text fields there. Did we get a login button pressed? We did. So let's paste that in there. And I'll put my closing curly brace for the else. All right, so we'll start off messages being empty. We have a username. We have a password. None of the rest of this crap matters because we don't have those on the screen. So if they didn't put something in for the username, we'll set the message. If they didn't put something in for the password, we'll set the message. If a message has some number of characters in it, that means we have an error. What are we going to do with it? We're going to call phone show alert. So let's call this a login error, and let's call the other guy a register error, just to prove the flexibility of our little function there. Okay, so this is a login error. It's got to take in the message that we had. Presenting view controller is going to be self, but in this case, self is login VC instead of register VC. And we can make our on-screen delay whatever we want. We currently have it set at 2. Although the way I have this written right now, I think I could actually have, just test something here real quick. I'm going to go to phone core, and we're going to make the on-screen delay a double, which means I no longer have to convert it to a double. So that means here in login, I can pass it a 2.25, and it'll have a slightly longer delay, so we have more control over it. All right. So that's if they didn't enter something in there on the main screen. So I'll go ahead and hit login. You must enter the username. Here, let's make it 1.25. Just make sure it looks like it goes substantially quicker. Doesn't seem much quicker. Huh? It is quicker? Okay.
I haven't noticed the difference between 1 second and 2 seconds.
All right, so we'll leave it at 2, whatever. So punchline is now showing alerts throughout our entire application should be fairly simple because we wrote the difficult code one time inside of our phone core, the stuff that uses our dispatch, system dispatcher stuff. All right, so now login code, assuming they've entered in the crap for login. Let's go to, where's my PF users? My users. Here's logging in. So here's what we'll do with this guy. Go ahead and paste it in here. So if we're inside the else and login VC right here, the username is going to be self.usernametf.text. We wouldn't be in this else if there wasn't something in there. The password will be self.password.text. All right, and we're going to try what this guy hopes to do. This is, again, does the thing in the background. So again, we have to be careful. So this is going to hope hopefully get our, what's this guy complaining about right now? Is this, oh, thank you. Trust me, trust me. All right. So what he returns, so once he's finished running, it's going to call this closure, passing in a user, but notice this guy is optional. So he might be nil, as well as an error if there was an error. So if the user is not equal to nil, that means that we actually just authenticated a user, and therefore we can do whatever we're going to do. So for us, we're probably going to go ahead and show our "we are logged in" screen, right? Okay, so let's go out here to our main storyboard. Okay, that's our role history, so let's have it get to our logged in screen initially. So I'm just going to give us a new view controller. And did I start doing these as size 5.5 or did I keep it at my other?
4.7.
Oh, whatever. All right, and we're going to go ahead and give this guy a code behind. So we're going to call this guy what? User menu VC. Good enough. So new file. This guy will be a UI view controller. We'll call it user menu VC. Actually, let's call it user homepage. Good enough. All right, we'll go back out to our storyboard and let's let this guy know he's no longer a normal view controller. He's now a user homepage. It's one of those guys. And we're also going to give him a storyboard ID so we can programmatically launch him. Okay, and we're just going to throw a little thing out here, user logged in, like that, just proving we got to the screen. And I'm going to go ahead and put my patented crappy user interface title bar, user homepage PC. Perfect. All right, so now in code, after we successfully logged in, we want to go ahead and have it take us to this screen, just showing that the user was logged in, even though we haven't done anything with the user. And what I'm going to do here, I'm lost. Oh, here it is. Login VC. So in the event we did successfully log in, what are we going to do? We're going to go ahead and we're going to say, well, here, we'll do it as a variable first. So let user homepage VC equal self.storyboard.instantiate view controller with identifier. The identifier is going to be user homepage VC as a user homepage VC. And then we'll go ahead and say self dot, we're going to do self dot present view controller. UHVC animated true with no completion block. So that should show it on the screen. If there was an error, then we can go ahead and call upon our alert shower dealy flippy thingamabob. So that is phone core dot show alert title login error message bad username / password presenting view controller as self.
Error from them?
Huh?
Don't we actually get an error from them that we can display?
Yeah, we could. You want to display the error?
Yeah, the message that we.
Oh, we get a message?
Yeah,
we
the
just get
string
a-
is called message, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
No, we just get a NS error.
No, we get.
Buses.
No, it's called error here.
Oh, well,
The error we get.
it's typed in, okay.
So error dot what was the user info? And then this guy, I think it was just called error. So fine, we'll print out whatever error comes back. And then on screen delay, we'll give it a 2. Okay. Go ahead and run this. And we'll put in a bad username and password. We'll hit login. Let's say invalid login parameters. Okay, fine. And here we'll, now it's no longer an optional.
Should it be error question mark dot user info? Or is that not?
No,
I don't think so.
you're just essentially saying it's no longer an optional. What?
No, he's right.
Oh,
Oh, so this will always have a value.
oh.
This guy might be an optional.
Mm-hmm. Just moved up to number 4.
Star for the day.
It was at number 4. I moved up to 3.
Well, I'm not on the list, so.
Yeah, I didn't really keep going.
Oh!
Right
Maybe it's
back
both.
down.
Maybe it's both. Number 7 now.
Message login error. So this guy should, he was an optional. We're calling his user info. Yep, it was both. They could both be optionals. So one was just superseding the other one. Okay, so now we'll log in with the real credentials. What did I say? ABC123. All right, so that takes us to this screen. Now, an interesting thing here. So once we log in, before we actually go to that next screen, I'm going to go ahead and say print the user ID is user dot object ID, and we'll go ahead and do that. So now we should get the object ID of the user that was that logged in printed to the screen here. So let's log in. So there's that. Here's the user ID of that guy. Okay. So now, using only what we've learned in class so far, not using Parse's documentation, I want to have this screen right here show the object ID of the user that's currently logged in. So instead of having it print out here, I want to have it go right here. Should be pretty easy for you if you've been following along with class. All right, so no longer print here. Instead, you want to have it right here. So I'll go ahead and we're going to commit these changes. Registration and login now work. I will commit those 6 changes and push. And everything worked fine from the repository?
Yep.
You were able to pull it down and run pod update and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
At least I was. No problem. Did in the lab too, so it worked there.
Yeah,
And
perfect.
I'm not an admin account, so everyone should be able to do it.
Perfect. All right, so this is our dice roller. So I'll go ahead and put this up on Blackboard, and I will see everybody on Wednesday.